Modern neurophysiology provides an incredibly detailed map of the brain's microscopic behavior. We can track the firing of individual neurons, the movement of molecular signaling pathways, and the millisecond oscillations of electrical synapses. At the opposite end of the spectrum, psychology provides a robust description of high-level human experience. It categorizes the mechanics of memory, the nuances of emotion, the formation of personality, and the nature of perception. This split screen represents the central problem. Between microscopic physical networks and subjective psychological states lies an empty void. We lack a mechanism explaining how cellular activity transforms into a thought. Existing models treat these domains as independent, suggesting consciousness suddenly emerges, leaving the gap unbridged. The Brain Kinematics Model suggests that consciousness arises from the continual evolution of the brain's internal regulatory continuum. Solving the transition from physical activity to psychological experience requires a structural layer that connects the two, a mechanism where physical movement and subjective organization are one and the same. The Brain Kinematics Model identifies a specific intermediate level of brain organization that functions as this missing link. This level operates at the mesoscale of the nervous system, the scale situated between individual neurons and the brain as a whole. At this scale, the BKM introduces the regulatory continuum, viewing physical neural activity and psychological experience as successive levels of a single transforming system. The active components are neural strain packages, dynamic packets of energy and information propagating through the nervous system. These strain packages travel through an evolving physical topology, which is continually modified by both the activity of the moment and the weight of past experience. Consciousness is the direct result of this continuum evolving over time. To understand it, we must first understand the mechanical principles that govern it. Continuum mechanics describes a specific relationship between physical form and motion. The structure of a medium dictates how energy moves through it. In the brain, structural topology defines the constraints for neural strain. A wave's path is dictated by the ridges and valleys of this architecture. This relationship is reciprocal. As strain moves, it physically reshapes the structure, subtly altering the topography for whatever follows. A structure without movement is static and incapable of regulation. Movement without an underlying structure lacks the organization required to carry meaning. The regulatory continuum is the inseparable unity of this form and movement. It is the physical realization of a system where the architecture and the data it carries are constantly co-evolving. Because every movement reshapes the structure, the brain possesses no permanently fixed organization. It reconstructs its own identity at every moment. To understand this mind, we look at the concept of a reference frame. In classical physics, objects interact against a static background, like billiard balls on a table. The table stays the same regardless of how the balls collide. In the brain, neural strain packages lack an independent external frame of reference. They are part of the medium itself. This continuum provides the dynamic reference frame. Because strain packages are continuous with the medium, their movement warps the entire grid. Consider that every piece of incoming information is interpreted relative to the brain's current physical state. Since this state defines the lens through which we experience the world, this dynamic reference frame corresponds to the state of mind. The state of mind is the instantaneous organization of the continuum, the momentary structural geometry that determines how sensory data, memories, and emotions are interpreted in this specific second. This makes the state of mind a common reference frame, the singular evolving filter through which all internal and external activity must pass. Traditional views of observation rely on a divide, a separate observer looking at a separate object. Within the regulatory continuum, this division is physically impossible. Since all neural strain exists within the same evolving reference frame, observation becomes an internal process. When a new neural strain package enters the system, it is interpreted relative to the current topography. This new strain forces a total reorganization. The entire grid morphs as it compares, integrates, and replaces the old geometry with a new, stabilized one. This new topology immediately becomes the reference frame for whatever happens next. The system interprets its future states through the organization it just created. Conscious experience is the continuous self-observation of this evolving continuum. It is a system that understands the world by constantly referencing and updating its own physical organization. This framework mirrors the philosophical doctrine of the movement of essence, the idea that reality is a continuous becoming rather than a collection of static things. In the BKM, this principle is expressed as the movement of organization. The brain's architecture is never still. It is a process of constant transformation. This movement occurs across a hierarchy of nested timescales. At the millisecond level, we see it as the synchronization of neuronal assemblies. As we move to the scale of seconds, the propagation of strain packages manifests as sequential pathways of thought. Over minutes, these shifts produce transitions between different states of mind. Scaling up to hours and days, the same continuous reorganization manifests as the modulation of our moods. Over months, years, and a lifetime, this exact same topological evolution results in the gradual adaptation of personality and the development of the individual. Every level of psychological organization represents a different rate of transformation within the same regulatory continuum. Instantaneous thoughts and lifelong personality traits are simply different timescales of one evolving architecture. The continuum is driven by the co-evolution of structure and flow. A more complex architecture supports richer dynamic organization, while that dynamic activity continually reshapes the architecture through plasticity. This suggests that consciousness is one manifestation of a general organizational principle, the same tendency toward increasing complexity that operates throughout the natural world. By focusing on the mesoscale, we can finally connect the microscopic world of neurons to the macroscopic world of psychology. The Brain Kinematics Model identifies the dynamics of neural string flow as the missing bridge. It provides the theoretical architecture to show how physical neural processes develop into the coherent reality of perception, thought, and conscious awareness.